South Sudan is a very interesting country because of the referendum that took place in 2011, and then it culminated into the independence celebration of South Sudan, where 98% of the people voted for succeeding to become a democratic country and also an independent country. And of course, as you guys are aware, is that South Sudan became independent because of the comprehensive peace agreement that was signed, that has a lot of provisions in terms of economic recovery in South Sudan, in terms of social setup, environmental issues, political issues, and overall, the development of a human capital in South Sudan, so that when South Sudan becomes independent, we will have a country that is governed by a rule of law, where we will have our own constitution, we'll have our own parliament, we'll have our own, judiciary justice systems, and also we'll have our own, government in terms of the cabinet. And then we'll also have our own president, we'll have our own vice president, also have different structures of government. So in a way, it was really good that the people of South Sudan who aspires to become a nation became a nation, and they then begin to delegate their powers to the government in the name of building a state. And in that, we then had a very robust constitution of South Sudan that defines our territory, that defines our army, that defines our economic system, that defines our political system, that defines our structure of government, and overall defines the basic and fundamental human rights in a way that can make South Sudan to become a well-known country in South Sudan, around Africa, around the world, and we will begin to reckon with the systems of the world. And that's the reason why we were quickly able to be admitted to the United Nations, we quickly to be admitted to the African Union, and we quickly became member of IGAD, and we quickly became also member of the East African Community. So those were some of the incentives in terms of recognition by the international system and international community, in a way that we become part and parcel of that community. And now what happened was that the government of South Sudan began to form and begin to work towards developing this country. We have seen some kind of basic services that were provided, but I think something happened very wrong, and something that extremely happened very wrong is that the SPLM as a political party, who actually worked hard to liberate this country and to work to aid the conditions necessary for referendum and also the comprehensive peace agreement, just 1 and 2 years after the independence, the SPLM party lost direction, it lost the vision, and that created, a country that I call it, a visionless country. And I think because of loss of vision, that's the reason why until today, you see South Sudan begin to, move without a sense of direction. And I think for us in civil society, we had several dialogues with government in terms of what we want to see, in terms of, addressing, the pandemic corruption, because the reason why also there's a loss of vision is because of existing corruptions, because most of the SPLM leadership thought, because they are participants in the liberation struggle, it's time to eat, and also it's a time to build leadership and also kick out some people within the leadership structure. So I think that became a problem of leadership, that becomes a problems of lack of vision, that becomes also problems of governance related issues, because we never had a conversation in terms of what type of country do we need to have as soon as we get our independence. And I think that time also we had so much money. I mean, if you look at, for example, the Oslo donor conference, that over 21 billion was earmarked for development in South Sudan, and most of this money was going to help us in infrastructure development, roads and bridges, hospitals, schools, primary schools, secondary schools, and universities. It's going to help us, enhancing even the human capital because we never had a government before. So that became one of the biggest issues that the international community has to become more strengthened in terms of our labor system, and also the economy that we were trying to build from nowhere. But because of lack of government and public policy from the government, especially spearheaded by SPLM as a party, then the whole system collapsed. And I think that legacy of the collapse of also the governance and the arrangements to do with service delivery, to do with the strategy getting lost, the baseline became what exactly we're actually facing right now, that the government of South Sudan cannot even figure out what happens. So what I want to say also in terms of competition between different actors of SPLM and the split of SPLM into SPLM now in government, SPLM-IO, SPLM Real SPLM, and in the middle there's also SPLM, I call it SPLM OPP, and also there's SPLM Sour. All these people were SPLM, but of course they're kicked out. But I think one of the also biggest issues that we want to talk about as part of the legacy for the independence was the penetration of the National Congress Party, a party that we were fighting for decades, a party that does not want to recognize us even to become independent, a party that was also not willing to even accept the CPA to be signed. And then we suddenly just decided to accept the NCP to be part of the SPLM, and that diluted the ideological framing of SPLM, including the vision of SPLM in terms of justice, liberty, and prosperity. So that became also one of the biggest challenges. But I also want to say that, because of pandemic corruption and because of the conflict that came with issues of power, the country lost significant amount of revenue. And that's the reason why we've seen, we only celebrated the independence of South Sudan for over 3 years. Since then, we had 7, 8, or 9 years of no celebration of independence. We've seen only the president issuing out, a state of nation, address in terms of what they expected the independence to be all about. And we've seen the people of South Sudan who actually dearly love this country now every single 9th of July just rally behind the flag. So they love the flag than loving the government of South Sudan. And that's dangerous, because in other democratic contexts and based on democratic values, citizens of a particular country are supposed to rally behind the flag, because the flag is a symbol of the country, and also they're supposed to rally behind their government, because the government is the protector of the constitution, the protector of the flag. This is not what's happening in South Sudan. So I think one thing that we really need to begin focusing on as part of moving forward is that it's important to begin to think about what are some of the things that we need to do as a country to really begin to strengthen governance and build peace. And one thing that I want to say as part of the incentives for this process moving forward is for His Excellency the President Salva Kiir Mayardit to maybe pardon Riek Machar in the name of building unity, to begin to build bridges in different actors of government, and to begin to define what types of transition we wanted to have. And the people of South Sudan have spoken. They wanted to see a total peace-building mechanism in South Sudan where the political parties and the political leaderships comes together and forgive each other and work together towards developing a very robust constitution, which is people's-driven constitution and more inclusive constitution. They want to see a unified and strengthened army, an army that rallies like the people of South Sudan rallying behind the constitution or behind the flag, a party that is called the Sudan or SSPDF, that does not care about other political parties, but cares about the people of South Sudan, that trying to protect the territory of South Sudan, and that an army that the people of South Sudan respect. Because right now, there's no respect of the citizens of South Sudan and the army. They look at the army as enemy. They look at other security factors. Of course, if you see, for example, the traffic police, you see the national security, you see even the police themselves, they're not respected by the citizens. So it's now time for us to say that the moment we strengthen the security apparatus who are more independent in their nature, we will then begin to build the trust between citizens and the security apparatus. But also, we need to begin to define what system of governance we want to have. I know right now there's a conversation about either we continue with the decentralization, which is basically taking responsibilities, physical, financial, and political responsibility to the counties and the states. But also there's this conversation about having a federal system of governance where the states becomes more powerful in a way of being able to capably be able to deliver services through the counties, municipalities, city councils, and town councils to the people of South Sudan. Because the local governments are the conduits of service delivery, they're the conduits of development. So what we're talking about as part of the constitution-making process is also to allow that system of governments to be able to strive. Also, we advocate for a lean government where we have a very small government at national level, we'll have also a very small government at the state level, so that some of the bulk of the resources can go for service delivery in those communities. Because we've seen how our communities are really suffering in the name of, having a country. We have, for example, access to agriculture is a problem, access to roads. If you look at, of course, our tarmac roads, it's few kilometers of tarmac roads, but even those few kilometers of tarmac road come with a huge cost. If you look, for example, at the Juba Bo Road, it costed more than $1 billion. Actually, the estimate who says that about $2 billion that are spent on less than 150 kilometers of road. We've seen over 2.1 billion barrels of fuel, of oil that has been pumped to China to finance a road from Juba to Terekeka going to Europe, and that close to about $1.8 billion that has been on the road, and the road has not even been finished. So we wanted to really be able to up our public finance and accountability measures, where we also strengthen our public procurement processes, so that the leakages of public funds is actually eliminated, so that most of the money goes into service delivery in terms of having a consolidated account. And then we can be able to say we're able to pay civil servants timely and also better. We're able to have, service delivery paid from our own internal resources, and then we're able to sort of, pay our army in a good way, and even use some of the money for also buying, arms for protecting ourselves. So those are the things that the government needs to think about in terms of honesty, but this needs to happen when there's a political will. So for us, we've been asking the government of South Sudan to really strengthen their political will, and also to strengthen their, trust deficit that they're facing right now, because there's no confidence among the leaders. And most of these leaders are not having the country at heart. They have their own interests at heart, and the individual interest sort of supersedes, the national interest. Because the national interest is about developing these nations, building the economy, building private sector, employing people. Right now, we have very, very, very few South Sudanese who are actually in the economic activities, right? If you look at, for example, our taxation system, right? It kills local businesses. It kills the small businesses. It pushes them out of the businesses. So there's no incentives in terms of allowing as many people as possible to participate in economic activities, because the taxation system does not go well with the current context in which people need to get engaged in economic activities. So therefore then they become better in society, because the moment we have a strengthened economic activities, then we have lots of people employed, and we can begin to see the nation getting developed. So those are a few things that I want to say in terms of what we want to see in terms of how independence is defined, and what we want to see as a vision of the government of South Sudan moving forward.